In the news tonight, His Majesty the King holds talks in Singapore on furthering bilateral ties and presents his views on Middle Eastern issues before heading to Jakarta to begin his visit to Indonesia. German Chancellor Angela Merkel reiterates Berlin's opposition to Israeli settlements on occupied Palestinian land, saying territorial integrity for the Palestinians is of essence. And the Ukrainian parliament votes to send fugitive President Viktor Yanukovych to the International Criminal Court and delays the formation of a new government. Good evening and welcome to a new edition of the news. Here are the details. On the second day of his visit to Singapore, His Majesty the King met with Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong to discuss ways of boosting bilateral ties, mainly in the economic field, as well as latest developments in the region, including Middle East peace and the crisis in Syria. The King and Hsien stressed the need to activate bilateral agreements to further promote bilateral cooperation. His Majesty said Jordan's economy provides a secure and stable investment environment and pointed that businesses could benefit from available investment opportunities in the energy, water, transport, tourism, services, education, and pharmaceutical fields. Separately, King Abdullah met with political, intellectual, and academic leaders at the Singaporean Middle East Institute, where he presented his views on a number of Middle East issues. His Majesty said it is crucial to support efforts towards a Palestinian-Israeli peace settlement, cautioning that the alternative to no peace would be instability, rising tension and violence. King Abdullah also briefed the gathering on Jordan's efforts vis-à-vis the Syrian refugees and the pressures the host communities are facing as a result of the growing influx. He urged the international community to assist Jordan so that Jordan can continue serving its Syrian guests. His Majesty also visited the Civil Service College in Singapore, a public sector institution that provides training for human resources, and voiced interest in sharing its experience with Jordan. On the sidelines of His Majesty's visit, Jordan and Singapore signed 2 MOUs in the areas of human resources development and joint investment. His Majesty left Singapore and flew to the Indonesian capital, Jakarta, where he will hold talks tomorrow with the Indonesian president and other officials. Minister of State for Information Affairs Mohammed Al-Momani presented the House of Representatives with the details on the government's intent to sell land in the Dead Sea area to an investment company, presumably at lower than market value, which raised a frenzy of media speculations over the past days. The House session was chaired by Speaker Atif Tarauni, and in attendance were Prime Minister Abdullah Ansur and cabinet members. Momani told the House the cabinet has postponed a decision on the sale agreement pending further investigation and assessment of the market value of land in question. After presenting the House with all the details, Momani pointed that after the Dead Sea was declared a developmental zone, the Development Zones Commission became the legal entity mandated with signing contracts, and hence it was the party that proposed the price for the sale of the land at 75,000 JDs per dönum. However, according to Momani, during a cabinet session earlier this week, another figure was verbally stated as the actual market value of the prospective land at 200,000 JDs per dönum, which prompted the cabinet to postpone a decision on the investment agreement pending further studies. German Chancellor Angela Merkel reiterated Berlin's opposition to Israeli settlements on occupied land where Palestinians seek statehood. On a visit to Jerusalem, Merkel discussed with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu the stalled peace process. Territorial integrity for the Palestinians is of essence, she said, and that is why the settlement issue fills Germany with concern. Her visit comes amid growing calls in Europe for a boycott against Israel over its settlement in the West Bank. Speaking at a press conference with Netanyahu, Merkel said boycott against Israel is not an option, adding that such measures hinder peacemaking. She said that once a framework agreement the U.S. Secretary of State is working on is reached, mutual recognition would have to take place. She stressed, however, that Middle East peace will require concession from both Palestinians and Israelis.
It will require large concessions from both sides, painful compromises, and the ability to abstain from one-sided measures such as Palestinian steps towards a one-sided declaration of independence, just like an Israeli settlement policy, which would put in question the ability to live with a future Palestinian state.
Syrians are about to replace Afghans as the world's largest refugee population, with a generation of children physically and emotionally scarred, said top UN officials at a UN General Assembly meeting today. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon told the Assembly the world body would do everything to implement a UN Security Council resolution adopted on Saturday to boost humanitarian aid access in Syria and get help to millions in need. Again, he urged the Syrian government and all parties to the conflict to ensure safe passage for the aid supplies along key routes.
What we need is guaranteed safe passage for humanitarian supplies along key routes. The human suffering revealed during the recent ceasefires in Homs and Yarmouk highlighted the absolute urgency of getting aid to those who desperately need it. I call on the Syrian government to authorize more humanitarian staff and partners to work in Syria. It is not credible to cite bureaucratic procedures as reasons for delay when it is the government itself that controls those procedures.
The UN Assistant Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and Deputy Emergency Relief Coordinator described the plight of children in Syria during the fighting as tragic.
Nearly 4.3 million children in Syria are affected by the conflict, and more than 1.2 million more have been forced out of Syria as refugees. Children have been killed, arrested, abducted, tortured, mutilated, sexually abused, and recruited by armed groups. They have been used as human shields. They are malnourished. Syria is in the danger of losing a generation of its children.
Over to Iraq, where multiple attacks have killed at least 22 people. At least 15 people were killed in a bombing in a crowded commercial area of Baghdad, and at least 36 were wounded, while a suicide bomber struck near the Anbar Provincial Council headquarters in Ramadi, killing 3 soldiers and wounding another 4. Gunmen also attacked a police checkpoint in a village west of Baji, a town north of Baghdad, killing 4 police and wounding 3. Anti-government fighters have occupied areas of Ramadi since last month and also control the city of Fallujah to its east, posing a major security challenge for the government and frustrating residents. This report looks at the aftermath of yesterday's shelling in Ramadi as violence left 35 people killed.
As Iraqi forces patrol the streets of Ramadi and its skies, residents are growing angry. Mortar shells have been falling for weeks now, destroying homes and more.
The shelling was arbitrary. There are no militants of the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant here. There are only safe families. They targeted generators and houses, wounding 2 women. It was a safe area, but if the shelling continues, everyone will flee.
Officials are searching for Islamist militants who've taken control of parts of the Anbar province. In Defense Ministry handout video, officials sort through items confiscated from the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant militant group. The footage also shows bodies of suspected militants killed in the fighting. Many fear the Sunni Islamist insurgents fighting the Shiite-led government will bring back the level of deadly sectarian strife that gripped Anbar during the U.S. invasion.
Egypt's new Prime Minister Ibrahim Mahlab said he would seek to eradicate militant violence in hopes that improved security will lead to economic recovery. Speaking after his appointment by President Adli Mansour, the new Prime Minister Ibrahim Mahlab said he hoped to form his government within 3 or 4 days. The appointment of Mahlab, formerly the housing minister, followed the surprise resignation of Prime Minister Hazem Biblawi's government yesterday. Mahlab is a civil engineer who was formerly head of one of Egypt's biggest construction firms. He was also an official in deposed President Hosni Mubarak's National Democratic Party. He said his government would work to provide a secure climate for a presidential election. And back here at home, a partnership agreement was signed today between the Queen Rania Teacher Academy, the Ministry of Education, and the U.S. Agency for International Development. The partnership aims to strengthen the quality of education in Jordan and improve teachers' skills through training. Under the agreement, witnessed by Her Majesty Queen Rania, USAID awards the Teachers Academy $3.2 million to implement a program in Jordanian schools dubbed Cultivating Inclusive and Supportive Learning Environments. Some 200 public schools will benefit from the program through workshops and training that will build the capacity of 4,000 teachers. Minister of Education Mohammed Nebat, U.S. Ambassador to Jordan Stuart Jones, as well as USAID Mission Director Beth Page were present at the signing ceremony. The Queen Rania Teachers Academy will also set up model community schools as well as parent-students coalitions that will help increase the community's involvement in the education process.
We've kicked off a new training program for teachers, and we were especially gratified to hear from the teachers themselves and to hear that the program is already having a direct benefit in the way that they're managing their classrooms and in the way that they are interacting with students and the way that they're able to deliver content to their students.
Today we are launching our new agreement with the Teachers Academy that will help support teacher training across the kingdom. And the education program in the USAID mission is central to our larger, broader development program in Jordan.
The Ukrainian parliament voted to send a fugitive president, Viktor Yanukovych, to the International Criminal Court and delayed the formation of a new government. Ukraine's interim leader, Alexander Turchinov, is now in charge of the country, whose ailing economy faces the risk of default and whose loyalties are sharply torn between Europe and longtime ruler Russia. Here's more.
A sea of flowers grows in Kyiv's Independence Square. Pictures of killed protesters sit as Ukrainians prepare for a new political era. After months of protests and last week deadly violence, the president Viktor Yanukovych was ousted and indicted for mass murder. The Ukrainian parliament has voted to send Yanukovych to The Hague to be tried over violence that led to at least 82 deaths in Kyiv last week. One mourner says the protesters died fighting to protect their own people.
In fact, thanks to the nationalist movement that stood to defend the people and that was not afraid of bullets or gunfire, we don't have this horrible future anymore. I am now optimistic about the future.
That future may take time. Parliament delayed the formation of a new government until Thursday to allow more time for debates. Ukraine's acting president Turchinov discussed the situation in mainly Russia-speaking Crimea and expressed concern about signs of separatism and threats to the country's territorial integrity. He said anyone who is held responsible for separatist move should be punished. One official says there's much work to be done.
The previous authorities have destroyed the basis of justice and have built not even a mafia but a gangster system. A system based on corruption and murderers. I repeat, murderers.
This morning, activists removed the star from the top of an Ukrainian parliament building in a symbolic attempt to get rid of the Soviet legacy in the country. The interim leadership also pledged to put the country back on course for European integration. Officials also said they wanted relations with Russia on new, equal, and good neighborly footing. Farah Ajlouni for the news at 10.
U.S. President Barack Obama told the Pentagon to prepare for the possibility that the United States will not leave behind any troops in Afghanistan after its troops drawn down at the end of this year. Obama gave the order to the Pentagon after a phone call to Afghan President Hamid Karzai, who still refuses to sign a bilateral security agreement allowing the U.S. to keep troops in the country after year's end. The White House said that Obama has specifically asked the Pentagon to ensure that it has adequate plans in place to accomplish an orderly withdrawal by the end of December. The White House statement came as the U.S. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel flew to Brussels for a NATO defense ministers meeting at which Afghanistan is to be discussed. Multicolored curtains of light filled the skies over northern Norway, known as the Northern Lights. A nature photographer captured the Northern Lights shining bright over Norway's third city of Trondheim in a time-lapse movie he named The Dazzling Beauty. The Northern Lights occur when large quantities of particles from solar explosions and flares hit the Earth's magnetic field. These particles migrate towards the magnetic fields of the North Pole and interact with the upper layers of the atmosphere, creating a spectacular green light show about 100 kilometers up in the sky. Tourist board statistics indicate the Northern Lights has led to a large growth in tourism in Norway in recent years. Amazing. And less than a week to the Oscars, and preparations are underway in Hollywood to get ready for the glam of the red carpet and stars. The Academy Awards ceremony will honor actors, technical achievements, and films of 2013. This report's look at the nominees of the Best Actress category.
With the 86th Annual Academy Awards just a couple of days away, here is a look at the nominees for the Best Actress category. First up is Amy Adams, who earned her 5th Oscar nod for her lead role in American Hustle. In the film, she plays a con woman alongside conman Christian Bale, forced to work for an unconventional FBI agent. Next up is Australian actress Cate Blanchett, who got her 6th Oscar nomination for her role in Woody Allen's Blue Jasmine as a down-on-her-luck former socialite. The 44-year-old is considered a heavy favorite after she swept all the lead actress prizes so far this year. Sandra Bullock got her 2nd nomination for a role in the special effects-rich film Gravity. Bullock plays an astronaut adrift in open space trying to get back to Earth. Dame Judi Dench is in the mix with her 7th Oscar nod as an Irish woman in search for her son in Philomena. The 79-year-old actress has previously won an Oscar for her role in Shakespeare in Love in 1999. Finally, rounding out the category is veteran Meryl Streep, who earned her record-setting 18th nomination with her work in August, Osage County. Here, Streep portrays a strong-willed, pill-addicted matriarch of a dysfunctional Oklahoma family. And to find out who will win the Golden Statuette, viewers have to tune in to the live telecast of the ceremony on Sunday, March 2nd.
We begin from the UAE and the Dubai Tennis Championship. Second seed Juan Martín del Porto of Argentina withdrew from the championship during his match against Indian wildcard entry Somdev Devarman. The Argentine, a 4-time winner of the tournament, looked to be suffering discomfort from a wrist injury and lost the first set on the tiebreak before conceding with a handshake to the man ranked 78th in the world. Still in tennis, and the Acapulco International in Mexico, American Sam Querrey overcame Mexican Tigre Hank in the first round of the tournament. However, it was not an easy game as Querrey lost the first set on a tiebreak but fought back to win 6-7, 6-4, 6-3 in almost 2 hours. In the next round, he will face either 5th seed Kevin Anderson of South Africa or qualifier Stephanie Robert of France. And finally, it continues to be cold and partly cloudy with a chance for rain as the kingdom remains under the effect of a mild depression and a cold front for the remainder of the night and tomorrow. Winds will be northwesterly moderate to brisk, stirring dusty conditions in the Badia region. Tomorrow, similar weather conditions prevail with a continued possibility for rain showers, inshallah, especially in the northern region. As for the Gulf of Aqaba, relatively cold conditions continue tonight, but will be fair tomorrow, while winds will be northerly moderate to fresh and the seas slightly high. The weatherman warns of possible low visibility in the hilly areas due to low-lying clouds. Here now is a look at temperatures forecast for tonight and tomorrow. And to close, his reminder of the day's top stories. His Majesty the King holds talks in Singapore on furthering bilateral ties and presents his views on Middle Eastern issues before heading to Jakarta to begin his visit to Indonesia. German Chancellor Angela Merkel reiterates Berlin's opposition to Israeli settlements on occupied Palestinian land, saying territorial integrity for the Palestinians is of essence. And the Ukrainian parliament votes to send fugitive President Viktor Yanukovych to the International Criminal Court and delays the formation of a new government. And with this, we come to the end of this edition of the news. I'm Alia Tuqan. Thank you for joining us and have a good night.